a hacer esta última sesión de esta mañana. La va a hacer Ritta Högbacka, o ahora... Ok, thanks. Y bueno, ella es investigadora y docente en el Departamento de Investigación Social de la Universidad de Helsinki, donde ha realizado estudios de género, sociología de la familia y globalización, y actualmente está investigando sobre adopción internacional con un trabajo de campo con la perspectiva de familias adoptivas finlandesas con madres biológicas surafricanas. Entonces, me parece un tema muy interesante, sobre todo comparado con las construcciones culturales que tenemos en España actualmente sobre la maternidad, donde madre solo hay una o madre es la que pare, que esta maternidad biológica sí que ha sido cuestionada por la adopción y ahora parece que la adopción ha olvidado maternidades múltiples que ahora se ponen de manifiesto. Entonces, también es interesante la charla que vamos a presenciar ahora en el sentido de jerarquización del mundo, esta idea de superioridad caritativa de los países occidentales, donde lo mejor que podemos hacer por los niños del tercer mundo, entre comillas, es salvarles, pero sin cambiar nuestras relaciones económicas con estos países. Y por otro lado, también es interesante el hecho de las familias adoptivas, porque son madres y padres que han estado enculturados con esta idea de que madre solo hay una, pero que consiguen deconstruir su propia concepción de algo tan esencial como es la maternidad para luego encontrar otros caminos que permitan otras formas de maternidades. Y, por último, un poco reincidir en eso que ya se ha mencionado de ese interés del niño y la niña. Y bueno, gracias. Thank you for being here. So, it's your turn. Okay.
I want to thank the organizers for inviting me here to this very interesting conference and also being in Barcelona for the first time. Sorry. Now, what I'm going to talk about opening adoption or open adoption, but by open adoption here, I mean actual contact between the birth and the adoptive family, and not so much communicative openness or sort of openness in talking about the issue of adoption within the adoptive family. I think there's also a need for the actual contact. Now, there's been a lot of research on open adoptions, but almost all of it in the context of Western domestic adoptions. And most of, these studies are made with a huge, big data sets, and they've actually followed the people for 10, 20 years. And I think it's fair to say that the main result of these studies is that there are positive outcomes of open adoption for all parties involved. Of course, there are complexities, like Barbara Ingvason showed us, but the main idea is that the main result is that it's positive. Now we know a lot less about these issues in the context of intercountry, international adoption, and it's certainly, there's a few studies, and I'll be referring to them as I go along. And also, it's not recommended in intercountry adoption at the moment. So let us start. But first, before I go into my actual studies, case studies, I want you to keep your eyes open and look for these two main axes or influences, which, as you'll be able to see from my studies, influence and structure somehow the experiences of the birth and adoptive parents. And both of these issues have already been mentioned in the Congress before, but one of them is is the different notions of parenthood that there seems to be in the, well, we can widely refer to it as the global north and then the global south. And Helen Penn has recently written a nice article where she draws out the differences. In the north, global north, the main idea is that of a nuclear family where there's one father, one mother, and then the interaction with the kids happen within the home. There's constant dyadic emotional attention, and the very important part of parenthood is you give your child a lot of material possessions. So poverty would be considered as irresponsible parenting, and it's always within the home. Whereas in the global south, and many internationally adopted children, of course, come from these countries, the better concept would be a multi-generational household, and often there are also multiple caretakers. I mean, the child could live with another family if they have better opportunities, I mean, educational opportunities, or helping the birth mother out in some difficult parts. And then the other, and of course open adoption particularly, brings this into the open. And the other is, of course, that in intercountry adoption intercountry adoptions happen in the context of very vast global inequalities, and birth mothers, birth parents, and adoptive parents are having different positions in these hierarchies. And of course, without this system, unequal system, intercountry adoption would not exist. But open adoption brings this into the forth, and therefore also makes it visible that there are very big distances between the parents, socioeconomic, geographic, cultural, and linguistic difficulties. So bear in mind these two. Of course, there might be others, but this is still an ongoing research process. It might be other principles like these. So what I will do in my presentation is having a look at some of the experiences of birth parents and adoptive parents of contact with each other. And if there is contact, how did it go in my materials? And I have two kinds of data sets. I went to South Africa and interviewed the poor black women, primarily, who had given their children for adoption on separate occasions in 2006, and then I went back in 2008 and 2009. And I did the interviews in 4 different parts of South Africa, and also used various routes to find the birth mothers. I mean, it's not that easy to find them, but I used homes for pregnant women, some contacts of social workers that were still in contact, and some programs where the birth mothers were involved in. So for this presentation, I'm going to look at the experiences of 24 black women who had given a child up, for some more than 12 years ago, but mainly 2 to 5 years, or for the other half it was more recent. And then a few who were still pregnant but had made adoption plans. And then I have interviews with Finnish adoptive parents who had actually interviewed from 10 different countries. And I started the interviews again in 2006, but then last year I did some more, specifically with parents who had some experience of contact. So maybe 30 different parents. At first, very quickly, to go into the birth mother part, and first very quickly to show you some context, because you can't obviously talk about birth mothers in the abstract. They're always embedded in their own societies. And in the new South Africa, there's increasing division between those who have permanent jobs and education and those who have nothing. And these patterns are very gendered and racialized. So it's mainly the black women who have suffered, and their unemployment rate has been more than 50%, so 56%. More than half of them have been unemployed. And this has increased now that there's neoliberal policies being implemented in the South African government, and also the last recession in 2010, 2011. The sufferers have been mostly black women and young people. So the women I interviewed, their dream job was to become a cleaner, or some said, I'm struggling so hard to find a stable job, and stable job meant a job that would pay enough. And of course, they weren't paid sufficient wages, and they had other children to support. So this is all combined. I mean, it's all depends what's happening in these parts of the world. So in globalization, there's needs to have lower production costs in other parts of the world, so their wages are not enough. And there's a lot of migrations and displacement going on, rural-urban migration, women coming from elsewhere, from Africa, to find employment. And also South Africa has had the largest population of HIV-positive people, but the main issue has been drugs, and they're now able to get the same medications that prolong life significantly. And most of them did not have any other alternative. So, of course, there might be birth mothers with drug or alcohol problems or other problems, but the majority of these women I encountered had nothing else wrong with them except that they were just extremely poor. Maybe I'll skip this. It's just one of them explaining how, and this came across in most of the interviews, how they were trying to be proper parents to the children that they still were parenting. I always see to it that my child has it first, never mind about myself. And also there was no social support. Usually the thing is, if you have a child, it doesn't matter if you're a lone mother, the grandmother usually looks after the child. And the reason why the birth fathers are in most cases not there, it's the women themselves, is mainly the legacy of apartheid. I mean, when only men were allowed to come to the cities and women had to stay in rural areas to look after, where they weren't allowed to come to the cities. So there's big patterns of these disruptions. And it showed in the women, so that most of them would say, well, a man, that would be the last thing that I want. I mean, they're no good. They're just going to leave me. And so it was the birth mother and her mother. And of course, the extended family now is under stress because of these issues. And next I'm going to show you a short video clip, because one picture can be more than 1,000 words, so maybe one video clip can be more than 1,000, 2,000 words. Escape, and then it's here, it's ready. It's only going to take 1 minute, and then to press it on, and then here. Okay. And voice? So these are Ethiopian birth mothers that an Australian news company interviewed in 2009, but they might as well be from my interviews. So she's saying, I don't regret, but when the adoptive mother took my child away, she said she would let me know his address, and she'd assist me, and at that time I was homeless. But it's almost 3 years, I've heard nothing. And another one saying, I have no words to express about what happened to my children. As a mother, not to be able to know my kids' situation. I have no words to express my emotions, not knowing what happened to my children. And as we heard, Ethiopia is now one of the biggest countries sending children.